record. Here we go.
All right, I heard
All
the
right, we're
notification.
recording. Everybody, welcome and hello, and welcome to From Distraction to Action, How EdTech Harms Kids with ADHD and What We Can Do About It. My name is Emily Cherkin. I am your moderator and host tonight. I have the privilege of introducing you to four really brilliant and lovely humans who are going to contribute to all of our collective wisdom tonight. Just a few housekeeping things. One, like I said, we are recording this. Two, we will send a link to anyone who registered. So if you want to watch it again or share it, you'll be able to do that tomorrow, depending on how long it takes me to get it uploaded. Three, we are turning off the chat feature because I find you have dueling listening and focus. And I've learned from Jared Cooney Horvath that we cannot multitask and focus. So it's Jared's fault that the chat's off. So take
Sorry.
notes with a pencil and paper. If you've got questions that you want to ask, please write them down. I will turn on the Q&A later. We have a 90 minutes scheduled. Jared has to leave at 60 minutes to go teach. So maybe we'll open it just before that to get a couple questions for you, Jared.
Sure.
And I think that's the housekeeping stuff. Yeah, I am really excited to be here. I think one other thing I'd like to point out is that we are all parents ourselves. So this is both personal and professional for many of us, all of us. And it's a topic that we all come to with slightly different perspectives, but shared concerns. So we are in the trenches with you as well and are here and hoping that you will leave feeling informed and empowered and motivated to really fight for change for all children, though specifically tonight we're focusing on children with ADHD diagnoses. So I would like to kick us off with just a really short intro. You guys take 30 seconds, who you are, maybe where you're from or what your kids' age, whatever, something about you and what you're most passionate about that brings you here tonight. I'll start very briefly. My name is Emily. I'm the Screentime consultant. I write at First Fish Chronicles. My mission is to quite frankly, dismantle the EdTech industry as it currently exists. So that is what I am working towards. But I'm a former middle school English teacher, so that is where my training and passion lies. I have a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old. I live this challenge daily. And I do not take any money from tech companies for the work that I do. So I like to say that anytime I'm speaking publicly. So, Mike, I'll kick it to you.
Sure. So, my name is Michael McLeod. I began my career as a speech and language pathologist, and I'm now an ADHD and executive functioning specialist. I'm the owner of GrowNOW ADHD. I travel the country and internationally performing professional development on executive functions to various public schools, private schools, charter schools, religious schools, whatever it may be, sharing this crucial information about executive functions, especially as it pertains to this current youth mental health crisis that we see. So my goal is to do what I can to improve the quality of life for youth and parents in a time when it's incredibly hard to be a child, to be a teenager, to be a parent. And a lot of that has to do with ed tech and the negative impacts it has had to education. So ending ed tech, improving quality of life. I, of course, also do not take any money from tech companies. Very important to say that. I have a 4.5-year-old daughter who will be 5 in 10 days. So this is basically her pre-birthday party. So
That's right.
thank you all for coming. We'll sing later.
Thanks, Mike. Jared, go for it.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jared. I am a teacher turned neuroscientist. So my focus, especially today, will be on kind of the mechanisms. What is ADHD? Why would tech kind of play into that negatively? My daughter's about to turn 3, and somebody asked me the other day, when will you buy her a cell phone? Kidding me? Never. Absolutely never.
Wow.
She'll have a cell phone when she buys one and figures out what a cell phone plan is. And then I'm probably going to take it unless she's graduated. Not in my house. Oh, she's going to hate me for that one. All right, over to you.
Andy, thanks, Jared.
Hi, everybody. My name is Andy Liddell. I'm a co-founder of the EdTech Law Center along with my wife, Julie. We're a consumer protection law firm in Austin, Texas, and we solve problems where school meets technology. Importantly, our clients don't pay out of pocket to talk to us or for any of our advice. We only get paid if we win. Emily is one of my clients, and we are taking on big tech in the classroom. And I look forward to talking about ways we might be able to advance youth civil rights through the justice system.
Great. Thanks, Andy. Meriwether.
Hi, my name is Meriwether Schas. I'm a former CPA and I have two children, ages 8 and 10, both of whom have ADHD diagnoses. And, I am currently in school part-time doing interior design, and otherwise I'm trying to raise good, healthy, well-adjusted children and protect them from the dangers of things like EdTech and social media and screens generally.
Great. And actually, it's Meriwether we can thank for pulling us all together like this, because I think it was an email that you sent to all of us, and we were like, let's just do a webinar. So thank you for helping
You're
get that
welcome.
started.
Thank you all.
Well, okay, fantastic. So here's what I want to do. Let's start with a definition, because I think when we talk about ADHD, there's lots of sort of myths and truths about it, I'm guessing. Mike, I'm going to have you start. Then Jared, why don't you jump in with your neuroscientist definition? But when people ask Mike, what is ADHD? What do you say?
Sure. So I will share a quick slide here very quickly. So what we have to understand about ADHD is for decades and decades, we looked at both ADHD and executive functions completely wrong. So ADHD is not an attention disorder, and it's not about external hyperactivity, external inattentiveness. That's where we got it wrong, was everything was based on external, behavioral based, what we can see with our eyes. So it was all hyperactive kids, kids who can't sit still, kids who have ants in their pants and can't sit at circle time, they're running around, and inattentive kids who just daydream and stare out the window. And when it came to executive functions, it was the same thing. It was external behavioral based. And still today, if you ask most people, what is executive functioning, they're going to say time management, organization, messy backpacks, messy folders. And this led to a lot of external behavioral based interventions that didn't help and didn't work and did not move the needle and did not improve long-term outcomes and quality of life for these kids and these families. So ADHD truly is a disorder of executive functioning. ADHD is the preeminent disorder of executive functions. Still to this day, I have parents call me and say, my son or my daughter has ADHD, but he really just struggles with executive functions. They are one in the same. So if you have ADHD, you have executive dysfunction. Can you have executive dysfunction and not have ADHD? Sure. You could be depressed and have other primary conditions like dyslexia or autism. But if you have ADHD, your primary need is the executive functioning system. And there's a big push from all the great pioneers, all the incredible people in this field, Dr. Russell Barkley, Sarah Ward, Kristen Jacobson, Dr. George McCloskey. We have to rename ADHD to Executive Functioning Developmental Disorder, EFDD. So what is executive functioning? I define it in 4 internal pillars with 1 foundation. The first is self-awareness, the very first executive skill to develop. It develops when they're young babies, when they start to recognize I have an impact on my world. The things I do, the things I say, the things that overall the things that I do affect myself and affect the people around me. When I cry, mom comes over and changes me, gives me milk, hugs me, sings to me. When I smile in mom's face, she smiles back. So it's one of the first executive skills to develop, but over time becomes one of the most delayed. And we start to see this in middle school when relationships become a little bit more cliquey and the groups start to form and it's no longer we're all friends, we're all family. Now it starts to impact them socially with social executive functions. So self-awareness, the first executive skill to develop. The second is self-regulation. So another name that was thrown out there to change ADHD, Dr. Russell Barkley likes to use the term self-regulation deficit disorder because this is what it's all about. The ability to regulate your emotions, your language, your body, your behavior in various environments towards various stimuli. So it's all about self-regulation, especially of emotions. If you were to look in the most recent edition of the DSM of all the diagnostic criteria needed to diagnose ADHD, you're not going to see the word emotions listed at all. But ask any ADHD parent. It's all about emotions. We have to remember that. So it's not hyperactivity. It's the ability to regulate your body. It's not inattentiveness. It's the inability to regulate your mind. This is all about self-regulation. Then, of course, self-motivation towards non-preferred tasks. Or basically, for today's youth, anything non-screen based, anything non-gamified, anything like that. Can they motivate themselves towards anything that does not give them instant gratification? Because that is what we are hardwiring their brain towards based on the childhood and the world that we are giving them outside of school. And today we're talking about in school, which is inhibiting their ability to develop internal self-motivation towards things that are delayed gratification. And then we have self-evaluation, the ability to learn from past experiences and apply it to the present moment. So we're not repeating the same mistakes and doing Groundhog's Day, if you will, perfectly timed, where you're making the same mistakes every single day without no matter the consequence or no matter the outcome. So for decades, we thought executive functioning was messy backpacks, messy folders. And it caused all these executive functioning coaches and executive function labs. Let's color code this and organize this. Well, think about it. You're going to have a messy backpack unless you're first self-aware that that's even a problem. Then you have to be regulated and motivated enough to do that incredibly boring task of cleaning a backpack. Then you have to be able to self-evaluate and think, hey, wait a second. In 2 periods, I have science class. She's going to say, take out your lab notebooks. Everyone's going to do it right away. And I'm going to be the one person with dirty, crinkled papers all over the place. I'm not going to like the way that feels. So I better do something about it now. That is true internal independence, not creating prompt dependence on the executive functioning coach or the teacher or the mom. And this is exactly what we're seeing now. Basically, a whole nother pandemic of delayed executive functioning skills. America leading the world in first semester college dropouts. We see all the statistics of Gen Z needing to take their parents to job interviews and talk to their hiring managers and all these different things happening because these skills are not developing because we're not giving them the organic practice to do it. Because executive functions are never developed through lectures and worksheets and all of that. They are and only will be developed through relationships, real face-to-face social relationships, and varied experiences. As many different things as possible to do. Having a real childhood of exploration, play, boredom, and struggle. The second we stole play and boredom from childhood and adolescence, the youth mental health crisis began because we replaced it with screen-based relationships and screen-based education. And that is what stole the organic practice to build these skills. Because the foundation to these 4 pillars is self-language, which is 2 specific skills that need to work together in harmony. The first is nonverbal working memory, the visual imagery system of the brain, which is our visual imagery hindsight, where we make mental movies of the past and learn from the past and gain competence and confidence from past experiences, and our nonverbal mental movie foresight, where we make a mental movie of what the future might look like so we can work towards that future and visualize it and work towards it, and then use our verbal working memory, self-directed talk, to make that mental movie come true and work towards that future. So many kids today are time blind because we don't have the imagination. Executive functioning is a fancy term for the imagination, being able to imagine things in your mind and work towards those images. Remember that book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Number 1, start with the end in mind. Visual imagery, foresight, being able to visualize things. And we do that when we're bored. We do that when we are experiencing conflict, when we're experiencing struggle. We talk to ourselves, we visualize to ourselves, and that allows us to utilize these 4 pillars right here. So bringing screens into education, bringing screens into the home, and the overuse of screens in childhood has significantly delayed the development of these crucial skills. And executive functions are and always will be the greatest predictor of success for human beings, far greater than IQ and far greater than GPA.
Oh my gosh. Okay, wait, there's so much to unpack in there, and I want to hear what Jared has to say to add to this. Mike, the other thing that you're just making me realize is I had a 15-year-old tell me that she worked with a bunch of elementary school kids and they were doing like a drama class, and she said, okay, let's pretend how that we're flying. And the kids said, how? Like they didn't know how to pretend, which is horrifying on so many levels.
That speaks volumes. You should be able to do that at 4 years old, three,
Yeah.
4 years old.
No. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, so Mike, I mean, I think all of us here are on the same page in feeling that the presence of ed tech, school-based screens, one-to-ones, internet-connected devices is detrimental to students' learning, all kinds of issues. Uh, Mike, I know you talk and a lot about this. Jared, is there anything you want to add with the definition of ADHD, or maybe what is it not? I don't know. I think there's. Go ahead.
So where I'm gonna take it, I love everything we just heard. I'm gonna take it back a step because I'm a neuroscientist, so I've got to find some sort of biological correlate. Otherwise, who knows what the heck we're talking about? So just and this is going to lead to a very important distinction that I think is worth kind of pointing out. So, real fast, to understand ADHD from a biological standpoint, we got to start with this. The world is way too noisy. There's way too much stuff bombarding your brain at any one moment. You can't take it all in. And now, all this stuff coming at your brain has different what we call valences. Some things are very strong, some things are very weak. So, like my voice right now, we'll say that's a strong signal. So, we'll put that up here. But if there was a little mouse sneezing in the corner, it'd be like, chew. There'd be a signal. It would just be a little lower than mine. Now, the first port of call every brain has to cut through this noise is what's called your threshold. This is a hard limit that says if you want to pay attention to anything, that signal's got to be stronger than this level. Anything below it, the brain simply won't process. So my voice right now is above your threshold. You can choose to pay attention. You don't have to, but it's there. But that little sneezing mouse, chew, because it drops below your threshold, love it or hate it, there ain't nothing there for you. So just kind of see this in action. I want to see if I can play this quick game here with you. Oh, I was supposed to put on here. Let me see if I can share my sound. I'm just gonna. Here, give me 1 second. Sorry, I gotta reset the thing because this is like as we get older, some things with threshold starts to change a little bit. So here, I want to see if I. Oh, I can't share sound. Never mind. That's all right. We're gonna go without the game. You probably notice it though. As you get older, you can't hear sounds anymore. And that's a thresholding issue. As we get older, our threshold for frequency starts moving up. It's harder and harder for us to hear frequencies. Kids can do it, we can't. Now, why does this matter? That's why it matters. One of the defining characteristics, if not the defining characteristic of ADHD at a biological level, is these kids have an abnormally high threshold. Almost nothing is breaking into their brain. That's where you kind of get that hyperactive flitting, right? When something finally does bust above their threshold, they go, oh, there to end, it's gone. Oh, there to end, it's gone. Oh, there to, and then it's gone. Nothing really stays in there. So, what's the number one way we have to treat ADHD biologically? Ritalin. Speed. Let me call a spade, man. We're 1-hydroxy different from cocaine. Speed. You and I take speed. What's going to happen to our threshold? Vroom. It's going to drop through the floor. More stuff gets in. You give a kid with ADHD speed, what's going to happen to their threshold? Vroom. The exact same thing. It just started so dang high that when it drops into a more normal level and we can sustain signals above it longer. Now they can sustain focus longer. So if you ever wondered why giving a kid ADHD speed would work, that's it. For a long time, we thought too much was getting in. Nothing is getting in. And so we're trying to get more into the system. Now, why does that matter? I just want to point out this other idea here. It's a concept called optimal arousal. Human beings, animals, everyone, we set our threshold according to our context. So if we're just kicking it in the park with our loved one and it's a sunny day and nothing's there to kill us or anything, we will set an abnormally high threshold because nothing matters. I don't need to hear that plane coming at me. I don't need to hear these people talking. But if you're being chased through the woods by a serial killer and every snap of a twig might be your life, you're going to set a wickedly low threshold. Everything is going to start getting in because it matters. So here's a good example of this. If you raise a rat in an impoverished cage where it's just them and food, there shouldn't even be a second rat in that picture, just one rat in a cage. When they die, you image their brain, it will look completely underdeveloped. You raise rats in an enriched environment, when they die, image their brain, it'll look very healthy. You raise a rat in a hyper enriched environment where there's way too much stuff going on, they will have the same underdevelopment as the rat who had nothing. Why? Because when there's so much signal, you have to set your threshold abnormally high just to cut through stuff. You end up basically stunting the system. That's induced ADHD. So we have a biological ADHD where some people absolutely have a high threshold and nothing is getting through. Then you have kids going on a screen where so much signal is coming at them that they self set their threshold abnormally high to cut through all this stuff. And you start to get ADHD like behaviors without what we would call diagnosable ADHD. But it's gotten so bad now that some doctors are considering scrapping the diagnostics of ADHD because everyone has it now. Not because we genuinely have a biological problem, but because we've all set the world is so damn loud, we have to set our thresholds abnormally high just to survive in this world. Now, give me a kid with actual biological ADHD. I put him on a screen where everyone else is setting their threshold high, so the screen is fighting to stay above me. I'm going to be bombarded with crap that I can't handle. Not only do I have ADHD, but now I'm working on a machine that's trying so hard to stay above my threshold for the first time in my life. I get wickedly overwhelmed. So that's why you tend to see, because of the battle for attention on the screen and because of their natural threshold, these two are not compatible. And most kids on a screen with ADHD will either flip out or get absolutely lost in the system, and it ain't a good thing. And real quick, I just have to point this out, and then I promise you I'm done. There's another learning disorder characterized by kids with an abnormally low threshold. Can you guess what that is? Now, by and large, that's autism spectrum disorder. To be fair, you know a kid with autism, you know one kid with autism. They're all very different. But one of the few commonalities we found is too much tends to get into their system. That's why you see blocking behaviors. That's why you see them focus on one thing to the exclusion of everything else. Put them on a screen. What do you think is going to happen? The screen, which is causing the whole world to set an abnormally high threshold, they are already starting so low. I can't even imagine how absolutely wickedly powerful some of this is going to be in their brain. Way too much. And somebody asked me the other day, what about co-diagnosed ASD, ADHD? Technically, biologically, you can't have that diagnosis. In fact, someone wrote an article about 2 years ago, said, ADHD, ASD, what are we talking about? And it's the argument that you will have attentional problems in each, but they cannot be the same because the mechanism has to be different. So we have to start treating those two as separate kind of fields. But I just wanted to point that out. So from a biological level, this is what we are looking at. That manifests as executive functioning disorder, which is exactly what Michael was talking about. And then we can kind of push forward from there.
That's so helpful. And the visualization of like what too much, not enough, and that threshold. So that was fascinating, both of you. And we could probably talk a lot more about just that. But Meriwether, I want to bring you in and have you share a little bit about your experience as a parent, kind of how you got involved in this. Like, what were the issues that you were noticing for your own kids with relation to the EdTech and screens? If you want to just say a few words about that. Oh, sorry, I have to unmute you. Yeah. Oh, you're still muted here.
Here we go. Can you hear me?
Yep, you good.
I've been aware of sort of the problems with screens generally for a while. I had kids' brains and screens, which my children and I are going through. And then I think it was through kids' brains and screens that I found Smart Free Phone Childhood. And I joined the WhatsApp group, and then there's the national group, and then there are a lot of subgroups, one of which is about EdTech. And I joined in I think August, right around the time, the FTC came out with the amicus brief that clarifies what CAPA does and doesn't say. And that's when the first thing I learned about was sort of just how the insane amount of data collection and selling that's happening with this technology, and then went on to learn about just how utterly useless it is, frankly. And kind of just from there was sort of a natural evolution to start thinking about, well, if this is already a problem for kids who don't have ADHD diagnoses, I would imagine that it has to be sort of maybe especially problematic for kids who do have ADHD diagnoses. And so I've sort of since then been kind of trying to find like-minded parents at my kids' school with some success, and just learn more about it and start talking to their teachers to try to find out, how much. I think we're pretty fortunate in that the school they do use more EdTech than I would like. It's not as bad as I think we're at a charter school in Brooklyn, New York. So I think my impression is that the New York City public schools use a lot more of it than we do, which is fortunate. But that's sort of how the journey began. And I've seen, I see challenges with it. Just we don't really let them use screens that much. They get like an hour of Minecraft every weekend, and there's no screens during the week. And they both know that they won't get a smartphone until they at least have their driver's license, and maybe beyond that. And they're pretty on board. They've actually, my son staged a protest against iReady last week, in fact, and got some of the other students in his class involved. So that was pretty exciting and cool. And they came home today complaining that their teachers said that they had to complete 45 minutes of reading on iReady before they would be allowed to read a physical hard copy of a book in their ELA class. And I'm like, this is just wild and insane. And it's the thing that I guess have found maybe the most challenging about it is how hard it is to navigate talking to other people about it and not stepping on toes, and then also dealing with the fact that the resistance that I encounter, like among parents or educators, administrators especially, because it really just seems pretty straightforward. There's just no, at least none that I've seen, no third party, not industry funded or influenced research that shows that any of this is helpful for any kid, let alone kids with ADHD. And until somebody can show me otherwise, it seems pretty like, why would we have a limited amount of time? Like the development is happening now. It's not a problem that we can wait to deal with when they're 20 or 25 or whatever, because then the damage is done, and it takes a lot more like patience and self-motivation and just struggle to deal with it later.
Yeah,
So
that's exactly right. Thank you, Meriwether. Okay, well, I'm going to jump right into this because I think so many people get this all the time. We hear that EdTech products can help students, especially those with diagnoses like ADHD. Andy, don't worry, I haven't forgotten you. We'll get to you in a moment. But Jared and Mike, tell us why that is not true.
Yeah, so obviously overall, I'm an ADHD executive functioning specialist, spending it, sharing information that can best help parents and students, and I end up talking a lot about screens and the dangers of screens, and we can tie so much of this youth mental health crisis to the rise of screens. Those things go hand in hand, and really nobody is a greater victim of big tech and the hyper marketing of screens than our neurodiverse kids and our ADHD kids. So the ADHD brain is really a lot of what I was talking about, that whole aspect of nonverbal and verbal working memory being weakened and disconnected in the ADHD brain is what causes time blindness and their brain to be hardwired towards instant gratification and constant stimulus response. So in today's world, you simply cannot discuss ADHD without also discussing a seriously debilitating screen addiction. Those things absolutely go hand in hand. I have worked with hundreds of families of kids with ADHD where screens have literally absolutely deteriorated their quality of life. Those things go hand in hand. So this is a self-regulation deficit disorder. So by placing a computer in front of them in an educational setting and asking them to resist their impulses, the ADHD brain is at the mercy of its impulses. This is a performance disorder. So in so many ways, giving them a laptop and asking them to resist the laptop, resist trying to hack it, resist downloading a VPN, resist going on any website you want, and listening to a lecture on the Civil War or the periodic table is like asking someone with a severe gambling addiction to go to a casino and read a book and don't pull a slot machine. It is absolutely impossible to do. Just like when you take an ADHD child and you walk your entire class down to the library. You pull the one ADHD child aside and you say, when you go in there, you have to be quiet. Say it to them 50 times, have them repeat it back to you 50 times. They go into that library. What's going to happen? Right? Was it a question of knowledge? No. Many kids with ADHD have an average to above average to gifted IQ. The IQ is there. He knew. He said it to you. He listened to you. He knew library means quiet. But the second he walked in there, he was at the mercy of his impulses. So
Mm.
there's no lectures, there's no words, there's nothing you can do to get them to resist having that laptop in front of them. So you can make a pretty solid argument. I'm sure Dr. Horvath can answer this much better than I can. But it is our ADHD youth that are the
Mm.
greatest victims of big tech and especially ed tech because it completely deteriorates the ability to learn. It debilitates executive functions, and executive functioning is the foundation to all learning.
Thank you, Mike.
Bingo.
Yeah, and I say all the time, ed tech is big tech, so it's the same stuff. Jared, add, please.
Just if you just straight data, ed tech sucks for learning, but there are two spots where it seems to be okay. Intelligent tutoring and learning disorder remediation. So when people hear that second one, learning disorder remediation, they assume, well, cool, ADHD is a learning disorder, off you go. Not so fast, my friends. There are 10 categories of learning disorders. The only ones ed tech appears to be a part of are what we call specific learning disorders. So that's anything with a dys in front of it, dyscalculia, dyslexia, dysgraphia. That might be where ed tech helps. I can tell you why that's probably not true, but ADHD is not part of that category. So
Mm.
when we talk about learning disorder remediation, we're talking about one of the disorders and how we're going to push that into a more normal function. ADHD does not work like that. So that not only is there no evidence that tech would ever help basic learning, there is evidence that kids with ADHD specifically do worse than everyone else once you have a screen. So the data is there. It's absolutely there.
So when school administrators or teachers say their ADHD students need tech, unless it's one of the dys.
That is, they do not fall under the category of learning disorder that would absolutely need tech. And by the way, the ones that need tech, if you've got dysgraphia and you can't do anything without a keyboard, I got no problem with that. I'll tell you why you'll never see anything move past the keyboard, but that is a very different thing than an executive functioning disorder.
Also, if it's
And
an iPad, they don't have keyboards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I have dyslexia, as does my daughter, and I still think that she's better off without the screen. Like she's, there's, I learned I did a lot of studying and tutoring, and am pretty good now. Like, but
Yeah,
it took some
you don't
effort.
you don't
She'll
have
she'll
to.
make it through. Like, you don't have to.
It's hilarious
Dysgraphia
to me
may be
how, if you think about like the people who push ed tech, were always like pushing ed tech because they were pushing back against the drill and kill model of education. School is so boring. All kids do is memorize. Like, now this will open up the. Isn't it funny that the only data that suggests ed tech works is when you use it to drill and kill? The one thing they
Yeah.
promise to avoid. But that's where, like, if you have a learning disorder, if you have dyslexia, say, what we might do is pop headphones on and just play ba, 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 da. And anytime you hear something different, you press a button. That is where ed tech is somewhat useful. When it comes to training and actually getting past there.
Yeah, so it's
Pass them
overall
on.
the educational system has been broken for a very, very long time. Look at our educational system, look at Finland's, look at other countries that are doing it different. It's been broken. Ed tech has made it far worse. Jared outlines it beautifully in his book. We're discussing it tonight, but this is exactly what it is. So, this whole idea that administrators would go to parents and say ADHD needs ed tech, they're most likely saying that to intentionally confuse the parent, or that administrator is misinformed and doesn't quite understand and is going off of pseudoscience that maybe they saw on social media. But those two things, absolutely in no way, shape, or form, you're introducing a drug to education. How is that helping? That you're basically giving them a Game Boy in so many ways, where try to learn this lecture while playing Mario. It's not going to help.
And Mike, I know you do professional development, and I actually think what's kind of cool about what you do is that it's like a backdoor into the tech conversation because you can
Uh-huh.
approach it from the learning side of like, let's talk about ADHD and executive function. And then it's just a no-brainer that the tech piece is going to be a part of that. So if you're a
Every
school,
single time.
yeah, this is why I think it's a sneaky way to get in there and get on to
Yes.
topics that schools might not be willing to or ready to hear. Okay, Andy, I want to hear like so the EdTech Law Center seeks to help parents whose children have been harmed by school issued tech. And I'm wondering, I know you have a list of active cases on the website where parents can go and look, but could you speak to some examples of those harms? What are you hearing? And what rights do parents have when it comes to controlling the device that comes home from the school?
Yeah, so let's talk about the harms. The harms range widely, and I think when we talk about ed tech, we have to think about we've got these one-to-one devices, right? We have a Chromebook, an iPad that's given to your kid when they're as young as kindergarten, and these companies take advantage of the trust we have in schools because everything else that comes in or through a school is really vetted and it's made safe by a whole bunch of invisible structures that make it so. And so if you think about curriculum, where there's a whole curriculum vetting process that involves experts and the public, but still gives school districts choice. If you think about the physical products that are in the classroom, we have a whole 125-year history of product liability law, and so there's a reason that your kid can't get their head stuck in a little hole in the back of the desk chair. There's a way to make the playground equipment safe. There's none of that when it comes to ed tech. It is the same computer that you could buy down the street at Best Buy, that's just thrown in front of your kid with the rough edges tried to be sanded off, but not by the school. And so so it's important to understand that we're in this environment, we're giving kids things that are not designed for them. And to Jared's point, if we want to use ed tech in very narrow ways to help kids with very specific needs, well, those are very specialized devices. We have general purpose devices. They are products and they are made. And so the economy that we're living in, the prevailing logic of the economy, some people call it surveillance capitalism, the idea that companies observe your behavior online, manipulate that behavior, and sell all of their predictions about your behavior for profit. Another way we call that is the attention economy. And I think what we all need to understand is human attention is really manipulable. It's something that can be pointed in a direction of, for someone else's benefit. And that's true if you think about social media or TikTok. You're scrolling through TikTok, you start getting all the things like, oh my God, it knows me so well. Well, it's because of how you respond to that app interface, and it learns very quickly about what is simulating to you. That logic holds to a greater or lesser extent to basically everything. And so, your car is an extension of that. Your doorbell is an extension of that. But the computers that your kids sit on in class every single day are a real extension of that, because Google, which also makes the Chromebook, is also the company that pioneered this business model. Google is a $2 trillion company today, give or take, because it was able to figure out how to monetize human attention. And that's what's happening at school. And so your kids, especially your kids with attention disorders, they're especially susceptible to this. And so they're being given defective products, because what you expect in school is a product that's designed to help your kid learn, that's designed to help keep your kid safe. Instead, your kid is getting a product that's designed to make Google money at the expense of their education, at the expense of their mental health, at the expense of your family life. And so that's I think the fundamental shift of frame that we need to all engage with, which is just because it comes from school and exists in school and is told it's good for your kids, it's not. It's not. The company selling that narrative is Google and Apple. And I mean, Apple's been trying to get into schools for 50 years. And Google came in about 12 years ago and ate their lunch because they were able to subsidize the cost of the Chromebook with this whole other attention monetization aspect that most companies didn't have at the time. So it's really important to understand that these things are not designed to help your kids learn. And once you understand that, then we start thinking about, okay, well then what are our remedies? What's our recourse here? And so I didn't start out in consumer protection law. I was a patent lawyer for a long time, for the first 15 years of my career. And my superpower with that was I can read really boring stuff for a really long time and explain it to normal people in a way they might be interested in. And so that's kind of my power with patent law that I was able to shift over to this work. My wife, Julie, my co-founder, she was an appellate attorney and one of the best, literally the best legal researcher I've ever met in my life. And what we've come to understand is that there are a lot of legal liabilities that these companies have. And so we started our law firm to help normal parents who are suffering the effects of these products in their lives. take action and get justice against these companies. And if you look, if you go all the way back to cigarettes and car safety and asbestos, the civil rights movement, all of these things happened because, not entirely because, but at least in part because people started filing lawsuits, right? The justice system is one pillar of social change. It's one of the things that we have to thank for the reason we don't really worry about getting in our cars. It's going to explode if we get into a fender bender, or when we come and have a raccoon eat a hole in a roof like we had here, and they need to put in insulation. Well, it's not going to give us cancer, and so we have these types of lawsuits to thank for that. And so getting back to your point, Emily, about or your question about what kinds of harms people experience in their life, there's a spectrum. There's a spectrum. And so from the most extreme, we have young kids, elementary school kids, getting contacted by strangers online through programs at their school and their parents think are safe. Things like Roblox, things like Minecraft, even things like Fortnite, where there are these networks of people who prey on kids and they coordinate and they have techniques they've developed. And so you'll go on Roblox, meet a kid, pretend to be their friend, and say, hey, let's go over to Discord. You go over to Discord, which does not record any conversations. Telegram's the same way. And then you start, building this relationship with kids, and then they start asking them to do things, send pictures of themselves, harm others. And so at the extreme end, you have, organized sexual abuse of kids through their computers. That's not most families. That's not even many families, but it does happen, right? It happens enough for it to be concerning, and for law enforcement agencies around the world to have identified these different groups, including a group called 764, a group called the O9A, a group called the Cult with a V instead of a U, a group called the COM. If you look this up, credible outlets have reported on it, from the Washington Post to Wired to outlets all over Europe. So this is a very grave harm. But it's not a common harm. And then you just back down. And at the other end of the spectrum is the much more common harm, and one that I would still say is very grave, because we're threatening kids' ability to get an education, their ability to focus in school, and that's the presence of the computer in places where it doesn't belong. And so once you move all of education onto your laptop, it's not designed to educate a kid, but is designed to extract their attention for someone else's profit. That's when you get the fights. That's when you get well, I thought you were in your bedroom doing homework. Why have you been watching YouTube for 2 hours, right? That's when you get the kid in class at school playing Fortnite, watching short videos, shopping online, gambling, investing, all of these things, because these companies employ people to direct user attention to the thing that they want it directed to. And it's not human weakness or human flaws, it's human nature. When they employ thousands of what they call behavioral engineers, but psychologists who know us better than we know ourselves, and are able to design user interfaces in a way to focus our attention on the things that are profitable to them, not the things that kids need to be focusing on in school, which is their schoolwork.
Thank you, Andy. My next question was going to be, what can parents do to protect their kids' focus, ADHD and non-ADHD kids? Although I think the answer is get them off the school tech. Was that what you would say? You guys
Yeah, and that's obviously easier said than done, but certainly, one thing, at least to start, is don't leave your kid alone with a screen, period. Right? That's an easy way to do it. And so if your kid's going to be doing homework, kitchen table, kitchen bar, whatever, a place where they're there in front of you, and at least you can observe what's happening. And then we can talk about, the next step, which is trying to minimize or eliminate the role of school tech in their life.
Yeah. Mike or Jared or Meriwether, do you want to add?
Yeah, so I would just add, that term harm, ever since that was so unbelievably beautifully said by Andy as usual, was, that this term harm is what has scared a lot of families from going to Andy's website and filling out that form. I'm seeing this word harm. It's like, I don't know if my kid was harmed, but Andy just defined the word harm as your child takes their school laptop into their room and is doing anything besides an educational thing. And it's like, I thought you were doing your schoolwork. What's going on? And that caused a little bickering between mom and son or mom and daughter. I can almost guarantee you that that exact thing has happened to every single person watching this webinar as we speak right now. That is a daily occurrence. That is happening all the time, and that is creating a friction within the family structure. That is a harm. And nothing breaks my heart more than when you have parents who, like Meriwether, have delayed, done everything they can to keep their child away from the harms of tech. These are the parents that go online and see child abducted by Roblox, child, this, and all the screen addictions, and seeing all the data from the youth mental health crisis. And they say, yeah, I'm not buying my kid a phone. I don't want him on social media. I'm not buying him an Xbox, PlayStation, Switch. And they do the very hard thing. And that involves a lot of fighting, a lot of "you're the worst mom, you're ruining my life, how dare you do that, all my friends have screens, you need to get me a screen." But the parents stay strong. That's a commendable thing. You deserve a Nobel Prize for doing that as a parent. But you doing that, parents doing that, and then all of a sudden tech comes home from school. Think about how much harm that causes. You're the strong parent who's willing to delay. Then all of a sudden, here comes this Chromebook from the school you're paying for, either out of pocket or through your taxes. That is serious harm.
I think another,
I think
go ahead, Meriwether.
I think also, I mean, it is harm even if there's no, harm in the way you're thinking we're thinking about it in this context, but that in the sense that we know that it's detrimental to appropriate brain development and learning, and that in and of itself is harmful. Like this is the window, like I said, where our kids' brains are developing and where they need to be in an environment that's nurturing appropriate brain development, and sticking them in front of a screen and giving them edtech is not conducive to that. It's antithetical to that. And that in and of itself is a harm, in my mind, at least.
I think this is such a good distinction. And the other, oftentimes if I start talking about data privacy, people kind of their eyes glow, well, whatever, who cares? Google knows everything I'm doing anyway. But I read this line today and it was like the reason we should care about privacy is because the violation of privacy is a gateway to other more serious civil rights violations and harms, right? Which we're seeing play out right now. And that really, I know that, but to see that put in writing really got my attention. And it's actually, Andy, I sent you that link today. It was about the Harvard report about, it's like a National Privacy Day. And it was actually Shoshana Zuboff was writing about this. And she said that of all of the top rights that they asked millennials and I think it was Gen Z about, their number one, 88% of them said their number one fear right now is their privacy. And I think that's very telling and very related to this on so many levels. So I don't know, Andy, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're seeing, I mean, I feel like my whole life of like being, Cassandra has converged on this last month of, this dismissal of, oh, I've got nothing to hide, right? Which is what people have told me for 20 years. I've got nothing to hide. The problem is you don't get to decide whether you have something to hide. Someone else decides whether you have something to hide. And we've seen people, American citizens, murdered in the streets. We've seen people here legally deported, held in inhumane conditions. And so the idea that, well, if I've got nothing to hide, I'll be fine. Well, you don't get to decide if you have anything to hide or if you're doing anything wrong. That's always for somebody else to decide. And once you understand how the surveillance economy or the attention economy works, that's your whole life. Because basically what you're doing is you're putting your whole life out there, or your whole life is being extracted from you, and companies are finding ways to use your life against you, whether that's to make you pay more for airfare or hotels, whether it's charge you higher interest rates for your home loan or your student loans, whether it's, you don't know the difference between a private college and a public college and a for-profit college, and targeting you in that respect. This whole business model is meant to use your whole life against you. And, privacy is the shield for that. To give you another beautiful metaphor, what I like to, so Lowry Presley wrote this book called Right to Oblivion, a philosopher, beautiful book, highly recommend it. But one of the metaphors that the author used, I had never really heard before, is that, when a seed is in the soil, it's not hiding. right? And privacy is that soil that our kids need to develop. They're not hiding from anything. They've got nothing to hide. This is a necessary condition for them to develop and grow. And I think we all had that benefit when we were young, to have a youth that was, not only like very lightly observed, but certainly not recorded permanently, and not recorded permanently for us to suffer the consequences of for the rest of our lives. We owe that to our kids, and now we've seen this incursion into their childhood with horrible results. I mean, we're seeing the immediate effects with kids with attention disorders and spectrum disorders, but I'm very concerned about the follow-on effects, about what happens when all this information that's been collected about you from your whole life is there for the taking and the data mining. And anybody who's ever been to therapy or analysis, you think about how much time you spend talking about your childhood and all the things that happened to you. Well, what if a company knew that better than you did? What if they knew all of the things that made you the way you are, and they weren't there to ameliorate those things, but instead to exploit them?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty disturbing. And you think too about ADHD and kids who are going to have IEPs or 504s and behavior records that are, stored on school contracted EdTech platforms. The privacy risks for those kids in particular, to Mike's point, is exceptionally extra risky. So I know we're going to lose Jared in a few minutes. I did open the Q&A. So if anyone has questions for us so far, we've covered a lot. Remember, this is breadth, not depth. My panelists, can you guys see the questions?
Can I chime in, Andy?
Please. Yeah.
I can listen to you all day, mate. You talk, you do good talk. I'm enjoying it.
Well, I might have to have you talk to my wife and kids, but thank you.
Can never be a prophet in your own home.
It's
fair enough.
Yeah, but I would just add overall, Andy has now completely redefined what the word harm is for everyone who's a little skeptical about it. Now we need every single person who's a part of this webinar that now feels better about the word harm to get to Andy's website, the guy who does good talk. Get to his website, check that website, get on there, fill out that form, set up a call with Andy, and hear some more of his good talk, because he'll do a free Zoom with you, and he'll talk to you. Hope I'm not overstepping my boundary saying that.
No, that's very generous and kind of you, Mike. I will share the site just for anybody who wants to see it. So we are very easy. It's edtech.law. So I can guarantee you we're the first ones doing this because we're able to get that domain name. And so you go to our website, and this will be the first pop-up, and just click intake form or learn more. And to reiterate, if you're curious about any of this, reach out. We've got people who will schedule a call with you. There's no obligation to do anything after you talk to us, but it helps us to know what are the harms, what's happening to folks, and I guess to make it very clear. Any conversations with us are protected by attorney-client privilege. So there is no risk that we'll tell anybody anything you don't want us to say, that we'll do anything without your consent. We are bound by our ethical obligations to clients, even to people who reach out. And the thing is, we need you. The world needs you. The harms that you're feeling, the interruptions to your family life, to your kids' development, to their education. These are real harms. These are real harms in the same way that air pollution is a real harm, in the same way other environmental pollutants are a real harm. And so, our firm is committed to finding a way to vindicate those rights in court. But to do that, we need plaintiffs. And so we're set up in such a way that it doesn't cost anything out of pocket. And, we are here to just advance the cause. But we can't do it on our own. We're not attorneys general. We don't work for the state. So we need people who feel like they've been wronged. And so we'd love to talk to you. Please reach out.
So so Andy speaks very eloquently. I'm going to just say, go to his website now and fill out that form, please. Every single person on this webinar, go to his website, click intake form. You need to do it immediately now. End of story.
And
that's the difference between Philadelphia and Texas.
New York.
And I'll say, as a client of Andy's, I have I've met very few people with more integrity than Andy. So, you are in good hands. And again, I've just learned so much, even if it's just to ask questions. So, Meriwether, I interrupted you. Did you want to add?
It was just sort of as an aside. I think the firm that Meta is using right currently to defend itself, and the current court case is the same firm that defended the tobacco. Isn't that true? They hired the same company. I mean, that's pretty telling. It's yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Jared, before we lose you, there are so many questions in this. Do you see, have you looked at them, Jared? I'm going to try to jump in. Many schools use this as a reason because life is so overstimulated and overengaging because of screens. Kids have short attention span, so we need gamification to hold their attention. How do schools?
It makes no sense.
I know. How do schools pivot within an attention economy without losing attention and interest? I mean,
Man, kids are already smoking so much, their lungs are so. We need to change teaching to include more cigarettes. I mean, no,
thank you.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Remember,
exactly.
You set your attention to the context you're in. If the classroom tries to mimic the outside world, we cannot be surprised when kids cannot pay attention. When we show them the same tool here that they see out there, they're going to bring those behaviors in here. This is why school has always been a closed system. School is not the real world. It exists purely by banning and protecting people from the real world. When people are like, we're training kids for the real world, yeah. Mate, when you're training me to play soccer, you don't put me on the soccer pitch with the Napoli team and say, there you go. You're training me to get there. Ergo, practice is not a game. So that's where we just have to regain structure within school. School has to be a context that when you come through that door, you will act different, you will think different, you will behave different. And the surest way to make sure that happens is you will not see the same things in a classroom that you see in your bedroom. It will be a different context, so we will train you how to act differently. So the more we try and bleed the real world into the classroom, don't be surprised when the real world craziness bleeds into education.
Exactly. There's a couple different questions. I'm combining some to synthesize a little bit. We're talking about 504s and IEPs, Mike. Like, should we put, I hear parents who say, I want to use a 504 or an IEP to get kids off of the tech, which is also the opposite of how they're also being used, which is to get kids on the tech. What would you say to that? Should parents use that as a strategy?
It's not. I don't think that's really necessary. You certainly, it's if you have ADHD, it's very helpful to have a 504 and an IEP. That's part of, why we have IDEA, learning difference and ADHD, those sorts of things. But, at this point, if that's something that you think can help, going and getting a neuropsych evaluation, having your diagnosis, presenting that to the school, them doing their evaluation and getting a 504 IEP to opt out, sure, absolutely. But today we're talking about, yes, ADHD kids and that diagnosis being harmed by tech, but this is happening to all kids. We just talked about the gamification and the micro learning and the outside world, all that kind of stuff. Sure, you can certainly pursue an IEP 504, but it's not. I don't necessarily need to opt out completely, but just want to avoid future problems. Overall, that's not the best reason to get an IEP or a 504.
Yeah.
But overall, if you have ADHD, you probably need one.
And there's a lot of questions about opting out here, into which I say I actually think that's actually a really necessary strategy right now because schools aren't moving fast enough to implement the changes that they need to protect children. And I say this as a teacher. I feel very, very, very sad that this is going to fall on teachers. It is an unfair burden. They often don't make the decisions about the devices or the EdTech apps that are being used. And I would say, and I think, Jared, you've said this before, 70% of teachers-ish are like fed up with this too, and they just need us to speak out. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I always say, don't expect teachers to drive this. Teachers have no voice because they lose their job if they speak up. But parents have a voice, and teachers will be the first ones to follow you. They're dying to get this crap out of their room. Anyone who's been in a classroom longer than 5 years knows this ain't going well, but we're stuck with it so long until we get enough pushback to help out.
Exactly, exactly. And I have an unplug EdTech toolkit that I'll pop the link in. It's got a bunch of letter templates and sorts of things that you can use to explore that process. Again, I always just say, please replace judgment with curiosity and approach with kindness and compassion, because again, these teachers, we need them as allies. For the most part, they want what's better for kids. Jared, one more question for you. Do you have one more second? Jared, I love your book, sharing this with board members, trying to help admin and staff understand why more tech. Andy, thank you. Oh, okay. That was just a nice thank you. That's great. There was a question about research. Is there a go-to document or research study to present to school administration with my Chromebook opt-out request? There's lots of those resources. Mike, do you have one, or you're all?
I was just waving to my friend Courtney. She's a good friend
Oh,
of
gotcha.
mine. She's a member of the GrowNOW team.
Yay. Jared, I mean, your book is the go-to and has a
Yeah.
bunch of.
I never, there's more references than you could care. I did not explicitly look at ADHD, but can you give me 2 seconds here?
Yes.
Here's what you're gonna do. How do I share my screen? There we go. Okay, this might suck for some of y'all, but you'll figure it out, I promise. So don't save that. Go to your
Okay.
internet. Please open your internet browser. Go to Google Scholar. For all the magic you think academics do, we all use Google Scholar. This is basically a Google search that will only show you academic research. That's all it's going to
Ah,
bring back to you. So type in ADHD digital technology learning, say. It's just going to spit back all the research. Here's a paper called Digital Technologies for Students with ADHD, Learning with ADHD, a review of technologies and strategies, leveling the digital playing field. Over here on the right, you're going to see PDF links where you can actually access the different papers. If there's a paper you want to access and it doesn't have a link like this one, just click on it and you'll get the email address of the person who wrote the paper, and you just send them an email and say, send me the paper. But that's where you can really lock down. I'm looking for evidence that ADHD is not going well with digital tech, and I want academic research as opposed to just opinion. So Google Scholar will be, if you're like me, I basically live on that website. I love it. And you'll
great.
go, like people go on YouTube, what do they call it? Like rabbit holes.
Yeah.
That's what I do on that. You'll find one paper and it'll link to another, and then 6 hours later, you're like, oh, I just
Uh,
wanted one thing. So that might be where, if you need something specific on a specific topic, that's where you can find it.
Jared, can you say anything about cost? Because that's another question. Like people are saying it's going to be too expensive to get rid of ed tech. I mean, I think we all probably have yeah, okay. I mean, that's my
Yeah,
reaction,
how can
but
it cost money to get rid of something? What? Last time I checked, if I threw away trash, it didn't cost me nothing. You got to remember, the only reason tech was so expensive is because we had to build infrastructure for it. The
yeah,
infrastructure of school was analog. When we throw away tech, we didn't throw away the analog infrastructure. It's
yeah.
still there.
Thank
We
you.
already had the whole
Thank you.
system is already in place. All we have to do is take a step backwards. You will save money, I promise you.
I
When
agree.
people talk about like the money on tech, there was a school I was working with. They were spending, we just did a tech audit. They were wasting $1 million a year on subscriptions that no one was
Yes.
using. And that was
Yes.
the same school that was like, oh, we can't afford paper. I'm like, dude, you think paper is going to cost your school $1 million to print
Yes.
out?
Yes.
Mate,
Yep.
I just
And
Well,
saved you $900,000.
I mean, if you also just look at the line item, the budget line items for the amount of money spent on this stuff, I mean,
exactly.
get rid of it and hire teachers, which would cost less than the amount you're spending on ed tech.
There you
Like a
have it.
lot
Bingo.
less.
Someone find the
Bingo.
Economist article that we were just quoted in, Jared, because that we talked about that. But that's it. I talked to a superintendent last week who said that, it's kind of interesting. I'm noticing that the licensing and the re-upping the contracts every year they raise the price 3 to 5%
Oh,
per
yeah.
product every year. Of
How
course they do.
astonishing.
Of course they do. That's the high cost of a free or low cost product in the beginning. So,
Yeah.
again, if there are school administrators on this call, like this is such an important thing to look at. It isn't more expensive, it's just how and where that money is being spent. And going back to that analog environment, I agree. Andy, there's a
It's
really
already
nice
there.
shout out here to you. A family, we reached out, talked to someone at EdTech Law Center. We recently discovered our son had watched over 1,700 non-educational YouTube videos during the school day since starting school, which was 75 hours on YouTube. And they're moving forward. The EdTech Law Center is fantastic. Fill out the form, talk to them. So we love to hear that.
Very, very kind of you to say. And that experience obviously is horrific. That's about 3 solid weeks of in-class instruction, considering a kid's in class for about 6 hours a day. That's not uncommon.
No.
That experience is
Jared,
very,
thank
Let's
very.
all say bye to Jared.
Okay. Bye,
Jared.
Jared. Thank you.
Woo!
Your book's amazing. Everyone should read it. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I do appreciate that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, all of this really just brings like the stories that I've heard from parents that went to their admin at school, superintendent, principal, whatever, and said, I want to opt out. I'm sure Andy can speak to this. And just the things that they hear, you're not allowed to do that. It's gonna set your kid up, it's gonna cause your kid to be delayed. We don't have the books anymore. We don't have the papers anymore. They just spit all this nonsense at them to almost, correct me if I'm wrong, bully them into not wanting to opt out. Andy can speak to that much.
I mean, that's very common. That is very
Yeah.
common. And so, once you get kind of outside the classroom teacher relationship, you have various levels of administrators who tend to be bought in on this for one reason or another. And yeah, but the fact of the matter is, you do have rights. You do have rights. Your school can't just decide to have your kid data mined for you. If they could do that, then what are the limits? If the school decided it was better for your kid to go work instead of go to school, could they put them to work in the fields, go dig a ditch? There are limits to what a school can do. And so, yeah, but again, it's all very common. I mean, I laugh with Emily, like, that these administrators kind of are made in a factory. It doesn't really matter whether you're in a large school district in the Northeast or a rural school district in Texas or the Pacific Northwest. Like, it's the same kind of people over and over again with the same kind of arguments, which I think speaks to the effectiveness of EdTech marketing and kind of the capture of the conversation that they've been able to achieve. But these folks are wrong, and unfortunately, the best way to assert your rights is in court.
Yeah.
Well, or they're told, as I was, but there's an exception. COPPA has an exception that the school doesn't need explicit parental information for education if the product is being used for educational purposes only.
Let's
That's
talk
entirely
about
fake.
that.
That doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's because
Yeah, you go and you read COPPA. There are 5 enumerated exceptions in the law. Not one of them is if it's used at school and the school makes them use it. Like, that's not there. So for kids under 13, companies need parent consent to collect information about them online, and that's what most of these EdTech products are internet enabled. They collect information about kids, and they're not getting consent from parents to do so.
which is the carve out that they're thinking of that they're relying on to make this statement.
That's the school official exemption, right?
So it's basically a campfire story that got started before the law got passed, and because of under enforcement and kind of a bipartisan consensus at elite levels, never got challenged. And so COPPA is a law that's meant to give children under 13 and their parents greater privacy rights online. It's not a replacement for the privacy rights the rest of us enjoy. It's an augmentation and supplementation of those rights. And it was passed in 1999 when the internet was young, before surveillance capitalism or the attention economy became a thing. And at the time, some school administrators, ironically or not, raised this concern and said, well, if we have to get consent from every parent, that could really mess up our computer labs. And the FTC, the agency charged with enforcing the law, said, we hear you, we're not going to make that exception. But somehow, over the course of 25 years, just observing that objection in the legislative history of this law has become gospel truth that this is a part of the law. So they've bootstrapped into the law their own exception that doesn't exist. And I've been fortunate enough, along with Emily, to have gone to Parliament in the UK and Congress here in the United States, and talk to legislatures around the country. And lawmaking is a very profound and serious thing. There's a lot of ceremony, and I think many of us are dissatisfied with the pace of it and the urgency. But the fact of it is, to make a law is a serious thing. To pass a law is a serious thing. And to see these companies essentially help themselves to the law is very offensive, because there's this whole process that has to happen. They're just going around. They're just subverting. And so, you know, but if you leave this conversation with nothing else, well, two things: it costs us nothing to talk to us, but the other thing is there is no school official exception in COPPA. It does not exist. It does not exist.
Yes, and I put the link, Andy, the FTC article I wrote that explains that a little
Yeah.
bit in the chat. Andy helped me write that, so it's verified by a lawyer, and there's a template attached to that that you can send to your school that says actually you can't consent.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
And to one viewer's question, it's COPPA, COPPA.
Thank you.
Children's Online Privacy Protection Act of 1998.
Thank you, Andy.
And there is one thing here that I should have mentioned earlier when Jared was talking about all like the dyscalculia, dysgraphia. Mary here had a great question of yes, I have a lot of students with ADHD who have dysgraphia who need computers to type. But let's think about what dysgraphia is. They don't have the fine motor skills to write with pen to paper. So typing is an appropriate accommodation. But guess what? They don't need a computer connected to the internet. You can access Word, Google Docs, and type instead of write without having access to YouTube and the entire internet. So yes, dysgraphia needs a keyboard, but it doesn't need the internet.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point too, Mike, to sort of recap in 1 minute. A talk I usually give at my town halls for parents is computers have changed a lot in the past 25 years. And so, honestly, the past 70 years. And so the guy who invented persuasive design, the remote behavioral manipulation for profit, is a Stanford professor, B.J. Fogg. He's still active. And his big insight was that a computer can be one of three things. It can be a tool, it can be a medium, or it can be a persuasive agent. So a tool is something that I use to do something I couldn't do without it, right? A medium, a way to exchange information between two or more people, and then a persuasive agent, a way to influence somebody else's behavior for the benefit of a third party. And when we think about computers when we were kids, well, they were a mix of medium and tool. And before that, the very first computers, they were only tool. They were just ways to do computations very fast at a very large scale for things like the census or military planning or business planning. But then, since the invention of this new business model, B.J. Fogg figured this out in 1998. 3 years later, Google invented surveillance capitalism. That mix of tool and medium and persuasive agent has really changed. So that when we were kids, computers were still mostly tool and a little bit of medium, depending on how old we were when we first got America Online or Prodigy. But now, computers that we give our kids, they're almost all persuasive agent. And otherwise, they're media, and they're very, very little tool. So to Mike's point, if you give a kid with dysgraphia a word processor, it doesn't need the internet. It doesn't need anything else in order to allow them to be a tool. And I still very strongly believe, to the shock of everybody I've sued, that there is a place for computers in school as tools only, and maybe to some extent as media. But there is no place in schools for a computer that's there to manipulate your attention or your kid's attention for the benefit of somebody else.
There is nothing wrong with computer labs like we all had growing up, going to that. And take a look at all these comments that we have in the Q&A from real parents and tell me this is not persuasive design. Our school district claims they don't have enough money or budget to pay for textbooks. And the one that drives me the most crazy is rainy day recess means kids free screen time. Screen time. And then we've been told that removing the screen option would mean needing to hire more aides, which is ultimately more expensive than the tech. Just think about that for a second. That is literally creating drug addicts. It's horrible.
You can get a 10-pack. You can get like 10 packs of playing cards for about $10.
That is horrible.
Recycle bin and duct tape. I threw an article I wrote called EdTech is not tech ed, which is what we're talking about here. We all believe in technology education. That is not the same thing as educational technology. And there's an incredibly important distinction, right? We can teach tech ed almost entirely analog. and we do
And
not
tech
need
ed is necessary, and they're not learning tech ed. They're
exactly
just
100%. That's there's so many things here. One family saying we were able to get YouTube and Google search blocked on our daughter's Chromebook. Took a couple of weeks, but it's been the best thing we did. Any advice how we can get her off iReady, or best to opt out of the Chromebook completely? I think it's mind-boggling that we have to request YouTube and Google search off. That should be the default because they shouldn't be internet connected. I mean, my strong opinion here is absolutely opt out. iReady, Andy, can you say anything
iReady's
about
terrible.
iReady? Is it?
Well, I can say that we recently sued their parent company
Great.
on December 23rd. So Merry Christmas to Curriculum Associates. And or whatever they celebrate, who knows?
They don't celebrate. They don't celebrate.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah, exactly.
you're
And
the Grinch,
so,
Andy.
yeah, I suppose. And so, yeah, so I think certainly anybody who has a specific program they're worried about, again, reach out because it's helpful to us whether or not you join the lawsuit. You're already in it as a parent, but it's helpful to understand every family's specific experience, and to be able to go to your school district and say, I'm so worried about this and so concerned and so educated about it that I decided to stand up for my family's rights and my kids' rights by
Yeah.
filing a lawsuit. That may get their attention more than just saying I think this is bad, because it's like it's Emily's point. Emily was a teacher. I'm not a teacher. My grandma was a teacher, but I'm also very sensitive to people who complain a lot. And I could never be a teacher because people complain constantly to teachers and about school and to school. And so I get that, just dispositionally, if you're going to run a school, you pretty much have to tune everybody out because everybody's always complaining about something, whether it's valid or not. Unfortunately, here we have really valid concerns, but it's just difficult to gain any purchase because there's just this, if they are a parent who's raising a concern, they're a parent who is complaining, and a parent who is complaining is necessarily a parent who is wrong, and so you're just dismissed. And so it's very, very difficult to come by yourself as a single entity, whether by yourself as one parent or as a couple or whatever. It's very difficult to get the attention of the leadership and not just be dismissed as a complainer.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a coincidence that it's tech bros versus a lot of activist moms, and a lot of teachers are women, right? I mean, there's some layers to this too that make this to be gaslit and told that we're wrong or that we're overreacting is a very common experience for those of us expressing these concerns. And we're here to say you're being gaslit. That's not true.
Right. You know more about this than they do, right? And I think there's a lot of this, oh, you just don't get it. You just don't know you're a girl, which is bullshit. And it really makes me mad. But it's true, right? It's well, actually, you guys don't know. How do these companies make their money? How does this work? Yeah. And so, no, I mean, to Emily's point, all of my activist friends, 95% are women, are moms. And so, we've been doing this work together for a really long time. I'm fortunate that I found my way to it the way that I did. But, you're not wrong. Don't be discouraged by somebody, some guy telling you you're wrong.
Tech bro. I always say one of the things that's most offensive to me as an educator is when technologists purport to have a solution to solve the problems of learning and education. And I say that's like if I designed a surgical tool and I walked into the operating room and said, let me perform the surgery because I designed the tool. Nobody, no doctor, no surgeon, no patient would want me doing the operation, but we do that all the time, or it is done to us, I should say. So, there's a question here. Are most of the EdTech software programs internet connected? And actually, I was going to ask you that, but I think the answer is it's not that the programs are, it's that the devices on which they're accessed are internet connected.
It's all,
and the programs.
Yes.
It's all internet connected.
The vast majority, especially the iReady, all of that. And we should probably at some point speak to the they need computers to prepare them for the future thing. Should we discuss that? Wonderful.
Sure. Jared does a good job debunking that myth. Mike, do you want to? I mean, again, I think all of us here would say the same thing. Mike,
first of all, this is technology, and every single one of your kids who are younger than you are better at tech than you are. Okay, I'm sorry. It's always
Yep.
been that natural phenomenon where the younger generations are better than the older. And every
Yep.
single one of you here with jobs and careers, how often did you practice that job and career when you were a child?
Right.
It's completely unnecessary. They know how to utilize it already. They know these different things. We're not saying no to computer labs where they can learn how to spot fake news or, do some research and do these different things. They don't need it on them 24 hours a day and to bring it home. That
Exactly.
is absolute nonsense and it is not helping and it's persuasive design at its finest. And there is no better way to sell a product than through fear. That is exactly what it is. That's why everyone has iPhones. If you don't have an iPhone, your kid's not going to have any friends. If you don't have an iPhone, he's going to be out socially. He's going to be alienated. He's going to be bullied. You better buy him that iPhone as soon as possible. It's fear-based marketing. It's
Yep.
the exact same thing with the Chromebooks. If they don't have Chromebooks and laptops in school, they have no chance in college and career. Well, we've seen the total opposite.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I just popped in the chat to Jared's written testimony from our U.S. Senate performance. It wasn't a our appearance on January 14th. But one of the things he says in that is that, kids are more digitally illiterate today than previous generations. So, the claim that this is making them better, you can ask any technology executive, what do you look for in an employee? It's not going to be they can sit in front of YouTube for hours. It's, they can problem solve, they can look people in the eye, they can communicate.
Think creatively,
Think creatively, exactly. Back to Mike's point at the very beginning about creativity. Those are the skills we need to protect, and those are the skills that EdTech displaces.
And just even small picture, if anyone would ever be allowed to go sit in the back of a class and observe a class. I've had the opportunity to observe over 300 classes over the past 2 years, and not once was the majority of the class completely off task.
Yeah.
They're bullying each other through Google Docs and typing to each other in Google Docs. They're playing games, they're online shopping, they're doing whatever website is available to them, they're on. And it's increasing behaviors, it's increasing dysregulation. There's no surprise that since EdTech came about, we've seen an increase in anxiety, medication, depression, school refusal, all of these different things. It took a broken system and made it worse. And parents should be allowed to observe a classroom, put a computer in the back of the class, put on Zoom and watch, and see what's happening on those screens. Half the class is not even paying attention.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason is because what we experience as being off task, Google experiences as profit.
Yep.
Exactly. I'm popping in here some of our contact information, Jared's website and book, my Substack, Andy's website and the forms. Meriwether, if you want to share any, you're welcome to, but no pressure.
And Emily, do you want to try and do like a rapid fire for all the questions that we weren't quite able to get to?
Yes.
I've got a few.
Go.
No,
Why don't you just go through? Yeah, I'm trying to read.
I'll just
and
run
listen.
down because I hate to leave anybody unacknowledged. So first of all, thanks everybody for being here tonight. I've got a few more minutes to stick around past the 90-minute mark, so happy to stick around, but don't feel like you have to. So parent rights with the 504 plan, awesome school in a program that's very low tech. Yes, write whatever you can into that 504 plan. So anybody who's asking about a 504 plan, just write it in. That my kid needs to not be on an internet connected device, and they need to sit in the front of the classroom, because then you're not looking at everybody else on their computer, and you're not being kind of like affected by the secondhand smoke of the attention economy. So next question: parents who restrict screens at home and then have their kids given computers at school, what do?
I'm doing that.
Yeah, I mean, so Emily's got her opt-out toolkit. Do that. Talk to your teachers. Talk about
Send your
first.
kid with a book. My daughter last week told me that she peer pressured 2 other kids in math to take the test on paper instead of the computer. Which is the kind of peer pressure I can get behind.
It's perfect, right? It's like that's great peer pressure. And again, to frame it different ways, it's like, if my family is vegetarian, I don't have to make the case for being vegetarian to you. All I have to say is, don't give my kid meat at school and tell them it's good for them. And so in a similar way with EdTech, these are my family values. Please respect them.
And if they're still being forced to use the devices at school, let the school know that you're not okay with them coming home with them, and that whatever they're required to be doing for homework on these devices, they need to be given a pen and paper alternative, because you don't allow internet to connected devices and screens at home. And they don't
And
have the authority. They didn't. It's not their right to determine what you do or don't do at home, right? Like,
and
so,
when the school says you can't opt out of curriculum, that's the post-it note I have here. This is what Andy told me. I'm not opting out of curriculum. I'm opting out of data collection. I'm opting out of the internet and limited access to YouTube. You, as a school, are required by law to provide a legal curriculum. Until you show me this is safe, I'm not using the computer, and neither is my child, right? Like, those are the kinds of reframe. It's not an opt out of curriculum, it's an opt out of all the harms. Yeah.
And also, this takes us back to that very first question of we live in a screen-filled world, so why not gamify the curriculum because attention is so fragmented. You see all the work we're putting in here to get rid of ed tech from all these crazy people pushing it on kids and pushing it on schools. But hey, let's be honest. At the end of the day, we're putting in the work to end ed tech. Parents, you still got a parent, all right? So a lot of parents, your houses at home look more like a casino than a house, and there's too many screens around there. So yeah, you can't complain about the Chromebook if your kid comes home and has an iPhone, a PlayStation, a Switch, and his own computer there as well. So parents, you still play a role in this. You're the parent. We can't outsource parenting onto the school, onto the teacher. You got to get rid of all that tech as well. We're all in this together. We're gonna make school again. We're doing everything we can, but no one's going to parent for you. You can't it's not like getting someone to mow your lawn or for someone to do that. You're going to have to recognize, I gave my kid too many screens too soon. I fell for the marketing. You're going to have to take the screens away.
And if I might
and make it through
plug my book here.
The withdrawal period, right? Like when the kids react, it won't be pretty or fun, but you will make it through. Yeah,
temporary withdrawal period. You don't keep screens in a child's life because of fear. And that's what you're doing.
Yeah. Okay, Andy, are you rapid firing through these?
Yes. So a very lovely note from a parent whose exceptional daughter is going to be interviewed by a New York Times reporter. So all I can say is thank you. It was my pleasure speaking with her. I'm so proud. I'm so excited to read what may come of that.
Amazing.
And so let's see, working hard to create change in our district, but no one wants to take ownership of the decision making. Teachers feel like their hands are tied. Administrators say they're following state guidance on digital literacy, and trying to make change at the state level takes forever. What are the best avenues forward to take action that can help all kids, not just opting out one kid at a time? And so this gets to collective action. Yep. So it's very hard. One parent complaining is very easily dismissed. A lot of parents working together hand in hand with teachers are a force. And, Emily is a teacher. Many of our friends from Fair Play, kind of our activist home, they're teachers. And so framing this as a labor issue can be helpful. That you didn't go into teaching to be someone's internet minder. You went into teaching because you love kids and love the thing you're teaching. And so trying to help teachers understand that, like, this isn't making your life easier. And also it's meant to replace you and deprofessionalize you in a way that makes you, more tenuously employed and ever more exploitable. Well, that might be a conversation people might want to have. It might help not to be in Texas, but it might help be a place where you're not an at-will state. But the idea is that there are bonds that need to be formed here, and that the teachers aren't your enemy. And I think that's an important point. They don't get a lot of say in this. They don't really get a lot of say at the high level policy. And so try and start there.
I just put 2 other resources for collective action. The Distraction Free Policy Projects meets weekly. Andy and I are also, the second resource is Screens in Schools work group out of Fair Play. Andy and I are co-chairs of that. You can see our lovely faces once a month in that meeting. It's a great way to meet other people doing the same fight. So those are both places you can go and find support.
And Smartphone Free Childhood is has been a great resource. They're wonderful. A bunch, like so many, wonderful supportive people.
Yes. And if you can't find people in your community, join one of these national organizations, because you're not crazy, you're not alone, you're just early. Emily's heard. I went through a number of my catchphrases with Emily when we were traveling for work together over the weekend. But what one is, we're not wrong, we're just early. And if you think about the protagonist of every time travel movie, they think they're insane, but it's like, no. I'm just early. I'm just early, but they think they're crazy. And so that's been our experience, certainly with phones in schools. When we started our work together 8 years ago, that was a pipe dream to think about phones being banned from schools, and now more than half of our states have some element of a cell phone ban. And so
Yeah, this
everybody here, we're
and
right.
it's the Jenga tower. I always use this metaphor. It's like wherever it is that you want to pull that piece out, whether it's opting out, whether it's running for office, suing a company, talking to a teacher, all of this matters. And I will tell you that today I talked to a representative from Missouri who is very concerned and is getting momentum because of our testimony before the Senate. So it's like there is a very different feeling in the air right now. This is a time where there's a lot of cushion to support you in bringing these questions up because there's a lot more people doing it.
And
Yeah.
it all starts with going to Andy's website. That is the number one thing I need every single person on this webinar to do. Go to his website and fill out that form, please. Like, yes, we're early, but it's getting pretty late, guys. Like,
Yeah.
But in
like,
this
think,
is
like things are getting bad.
but this is how, seatbelts like laws got
Yes.
passed, and cigarettes, they're big, like, got taken down, and it's because parents, and well, at least for the seatbelts, like we're saying this is problematic,
Yeah.
and so it starts from the ground up, and I think that momentum is building,
Amazing.
fortunately.
It's for sure building. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
100%. Okay,
Um,
I'm going to acknowledge that we're at 90 minutes. I can stay on. If people need to hop off, go for it. I will try and figure out if we can save all these questions too, so we can post those as well. Meriwether and Michael, if you guys have to bounce, we totally understand. I'm happy to stay a little longer. And
I could stay for another 5 minutes, but I have to
Okay.
at 9:40.
well, spinning through the questions, I think thematically we've hit most of them. I do want to acknowledge the director of technology from a school district. Thank you for being here. Understand
Yes.
that we're on your side too. And so very happy that you're here. And please let us know however we can help support you, because the fact that you're here and the fact that you're interested makes you, well, certainly unusual, if not entirely unique from my experience with school directors of technology. So thank you very much for your time and being here tonight with us.
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
think finally to conclude, um, what do we got?
And I would just add to what you just said. Every single time I've done a PD and I'm sitting in front of the entire school staff and I say this phrase, "Ed tech is the worst thing to ever happen to education," the teachers stand up and applaud.
Yeah.
So the vast majority of teachers I've met are 100% on our sides. They did not choose this profession and take out student loans to deal with ed tech.
100%.
So teachers want to inspire kids, help kids, improve their quality of life. They're tired of teaching to the test. They're tired of standardized testing. They're tired of ed tech. And they just want to see kids flourish. And it's going to happen a lot faster if we eliminate ed tech.
I asked a group of teachers in Kentucky last year what would happen if all of the iPads and EdTech just dissipated overnight, just poof, we're gone. And they were like, we'd be fine. And I thought, we'd be fine is a very
Better than
interesting
fine.
response. And how much money are we spending to have them be fine without it? Like this is just insanity. So yeah, there's lots of praise in here for Jared's book, for Andy for EdTech Law Center. Here's a question, Andy. Are schools legally allowed to say you can't opt out of devices?
Well, I think let's end it there. And so no, for a whole variety of reasons, right? So
It's
we
my
have
favorite question of the night.
right, we got 504 plans, right? And so if your kid has, an accommodation that needs to be made, they need to make the accommodation. Schools can't decide to let companies data mine your kids without your consent. And so, between those two things, that there's a lot of power there. And so the idea that you are legally not allowed to opt out, that's not true. Schools often say, "Oh, we have state standards around technology instruction and everything else." Well, that's not carte blanche to sit your kid down in front of a computer for 6.5 hours a day. And so that's just simply not true. It's a very heavy-handed way of dismissing, troublemakers, but it's not the law.
And if you're being told that, contact Andy.
Yes, and we will help.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
Gosh,
Any Meriwether, I know we talked about this earlier, just like one sentence that you would like to convey to parents about this.
don't give up. Like, keep trying. It's hard. I mean, and it can feel very overwhelming, and it's easy to feel defeated. But find other parents, make sort of start conversations. How do you feel about this? And you will find some that agree, and then work together, because when it is certainly much more powerful when there's a group of you who go to the school and say, look, this is problematic, and like, what are our options? We want to opt out. It's going to be a lot more impactful if it's not just one or two of you, but 4 or 5 of you, and even and that makes a big difference. So keep doing it and fighting for your kids. It's your kids. It's your kids, and you love them more than anything in the world. So keep doing it, because it's worth it.
Yeah, we're fighting for their future mental health, cognitive health, emotional health, physical health, political health. This matters.
Everything.
Yeah.
It matters.
Yeah. Thank you, Meriwether. Mike, any last words?
Yeah, I would just say hope. For the past, we all know how long we have been playing the most sick and twisted science experiment on our youth and on our kids. And from about it, we have an absolutely horrible youth mental health crisis in so many different ways, when a total decline of play, boredom, creativity, struggle, and replaced it with screen-based play and screen-based learning. So yes, this has been a really bad time to be a kid, really bad time to be a teen.
Yeah.
But the data is in, and the data is in Jared's book, in my book, all these different things. The information is there, and now just like Andy hinted at earlier, we're seeing atrocities in all facets of life happening these days. Right? You can't even watch the news anymore. These things are happening, but the data is in on how kids learn, how schools should look. And it's people that attend webinars like this on a Monday night. the people that do this and seeing the Q&A and hearing from Andy and hearing from all of you, it gives me a lot of hope, and I want parents to have a lot of hope, to realize the world is going to change for the better because of the kind of people that attend webinars like this.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Andy, last words?
Well, thank you all for being here tonight. Yeah, to Mike's word, to Mike's thoughts, like. Hope is it. I mean, hope is the necessary ingredient for all of this. And so don't give up hope. Find your people. We're your people. So you can always find us at Fair Play or Smartphone Free Childhood US. And just understand we're right and we're going to win. And the last thing I'll leave you with is I'm happy to coordinate webinars that are much more specific about EdTech and more legally focused even than this is, for your school community. And so if you have a group of parents, I mean, I've done them for as few as 15 people. And so if you can get a handful of folks together on some night whenever it's convenient for everybody, I'm very happy to go through in more detail about what's going on, what's wrong, what the legal harms are, and then what your recourse may be. But I just would thank you all again for being here, for sharing this night with us. 90 minutes sure flies when you're talking about something you're passionate about. And so thank you all, and hang in there.
Andy, you are the face of hope.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Michael.
You all are. I mean,
I am very touched by all of this. So thank you all. And it's truly, it's our honor to be fighting with you all and for you all and for our kids. I mean, this is just, this is everyone's future. This is not just, my 2 kids' future. This is all of our kids' future in the world that we all want to, live in, want them to grow up in, and the one I want to grow old in. And so, we're doing this together for each other.
And they depend on us. They look to us. So let's do right by them.
And I don't think any of us are going to get to the end of our life and go, gosh, I wish I hadn't said anything about this. I think I'm really glad we did this.
I wish I spent more time on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, I will close this out by saying it's been an honor and a privilege to be your teachers today. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to my amazing panelists. We will post the link. If you registered, which you obviously did, you'll get a link to it. So please share it with anyone and everyone. If you have feedback, please send it. I put all our contact information in there. Meriwether, Mike.
Oh, good, sure.
Thank you again for your tireless efforts and the work you do. I'm grateful to know you and call you colleagues and allies in this fight.
Likewise.
I feel the same way. You guys really inspire me. Incredible people.
Oh, we'll do the heart. Or wait,
Bye.
I don't know. Whatever the heart.
Stay strong.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.